September 7th and 8th, blood moon, a sign of the apocalypse, prophecy fulfilled. September 7th and 8th, 2025. Two dates that have astronomers worldwide tracking the most significant lunar event in over a decade. You will be shocked when you find out 7 discoveries about September 7th, Bible's blood moon and prophecy. Discovery 1. What's happening to the moon? Imagine stepping outside this weekend and witnessing the moon transform into a glowing orb of deep crimson, hanging in the darkness like a cosmic warning sign. Here's what sets September's blood moon apart from the dozens of lunar eclipses that occur each decade. The September eclipse will last more than 5 hours from start to finish. And get this, nearly 77% of the world's population will be able to view at least part of this event. That's over 6 billion people who have the opportunity to witness the same cosmic phenomenon simultaneously. Here's something that might surprise you. For sky watchers, no special glasses or protection are needed. Unlike solar eclipses that can permanently damage your vision, lunar eclipses are completely safe to view with the naked eye. Discovery 2. Prophecy on fire. What the Bible actually says. For centuries, biblical scholars have debated whether passages describing the moon turning to blood should be interpreted literally or symbolically. The September 7th to 8th event may be settling that debate definitively. Joel 2:31 prophesied, "The sun shall be turned to darkness, and the moon to blood, before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes." Revelation 6:12 describes the 6th seal judgment. "I looked when he opened the 6th seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood." But here's what most people miss about these prophecies. They don't just describe the moon appearing red. They describe the moon becoming blood. The Hebrew word used in Joel is dam, actual blood, not just blood-colored. The Greek word in Revelation is haima, the same root word from which we get hematite, the iron oxide compound now forming on the lunar surface. But the blood moon prophecies connect to a larger biblical principle that most people don't understand. The heavens were designed as God's primary communication system to humanity. Genesis 1:14 establishes this principle. "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, and years." The Hebrew word for signs is oath, the same word used for miraculous signs, covenant markers, and divine communications throughout Scripture. The heavenly bodies weren't created just for illumination or timekeeping. They were designed as divine billboards, announcing God's activities to humanity. But here's what makes this communication system particularly sophisticated. It operates on multiple levels simultaneously. Level 1. Natural revelation. Psalm 19:1-2 describes the basic level. "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge." Even without understanding prophetic significance, celestial phenomena demonstrate God's existence, power, and creativity to anyone willing to observe. Level 2. Prophetic announcement. Matthew 24:29-30 describes Jesus using celestial signs to announce his return. "Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, And they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Celestial events serve as advance announcements of divine intervention in human affairs. Level 3. Judgment Warning. Isaiah 13:10 connects celestial signs to divine judgment. For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. When heavenly bodies deviate from normal patterns, they're warning humanity that divine patience has limits and judgment approaches. Here's what should make every believer's heart race. Over 81% of biblical prophecies have already been fulfilled with precise accuracy. The remaining 19% describe end-times events that require specific global conditions to exist before they can be completed. Those conditions are now in place, but the biblical blood moon prophecies include timing indicators that connect them to specific periods in God's prophetic timeline. Joel 2:30-31 provides the sequence. And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and the terrible day of the Lord come. The blood moon appears before the day of the Lord, not during it, but as an advance warning that it approaches. This timing distinction is crucial for understanding current events. If we're seeing literal lunar blood formation, we're not witnessing the final judgment. And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Notice the progression. Celestial signs appear first, then global distress follows, then human fear intensifies as people recognize the implications. Current global conditions match this progression exactly. Unusual celestial phenomena are multiplying, while international tensions escalate, and public anxiety about the future increases. But here's what many miss about the blood moon prophecies. They describe signs for Israel during the tribulation period, not signs for the church during the current age. Romans 11:25 explains the timing. For I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part is happened to Israel, until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. Israel's spiritual blindness is temporary. When the church age ends with the rapture, when the fullness of the Gentiles is complete, Israel's eyes will be opened to recognize Jesus as their Messiah. The blood moon signs described in Joel and Revelation serve to awaken Israel spiritually during the tribulation period after the church has been removed. 2 Peter 3:9 reveals God's heart behind all prophetic warnings. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness, but is long-suffering to usward, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. Every sign, every wonder, every supernatural event is an expression of divine mercy. God provides warnings because he desires repentance, not destruction. He gives advance notice because he wants people to prepare spiritually, not panic physically. Discovery 3. Parallel signs. Euphrates drying, rivers turn blood red. The lunar hematite formation isn't occurring in isolation. It's happening while multiple signs manifest simultaneously across different systems of creation. The Euphrates River has dropped to historically low levels, exposing archaeological sites and creating conditions that match Revelation 16:12. August 15th, 2025, 6:47 a.m. local time. Something happened to the Sea of Galilee. The most sacred lake in Christianity turned blood red, as if someone had poured crimson dye into 64 square miles of pristine water overnight. This story has had many people wondering, is this a fulfillment of end times prophecy? Is the water turning to blood? But here's what makes this story even more unsettling. This isn't an isolated incident. In fact, I'm about to reveal 5 separate locations around the world where water has mysteriously turned the color of blood. And what I discovered about the true cause will shock you. What I'm about to share with you is happening right now, across multiple continents, and most people have no idea how widespread this phenomenon has become. A canal in Nootdorp, the Netherlands, blood red. Bondi Beach in Australia, blood red. The Beirut River in Lebanon, blood red. A river in Zhejiang Province, China, blood red. And here's the one that really got my attention. Rainfall in Sawanagala, Sri Lanka came down looking like blood itself. Now, before I reveal what's really behind these mysterious events, let me ask you something that might keep you up tonight. Could these be the biblical signs we've been warned about for thousands of years? Here's where things get fascinating and terrifying. The Bible doesn't just mention water turning to blood once or twice. It's actually a recurring theme that appears at the most critical moments in human history. And what's described sounds exactly like what we're seeing today. But wait, there's something specific about these prophecies that most people miss. Something that will determine whether we're actually living through the end times or witnessing something else entirely. I'll reveal that crucial detail in just a moment. First, let's examine what the ancient texts actually say, because the specifics matter more than you might think. The book of Revelation warns us that during the second trumpet judgment, something catastrophic will happen. The second angel sounded his trumpet, and something like a huge mountain, all ablaze, was thrown into the sea. A third of the sea turned into blood. A third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. Revelation 8:8-9. But that's not all. The prophecy gets even more intense. Later, in Revelation 16:3, we're told about an even more devastating event. The second angel poured out his bowl on the sea, and it turned into blood like that of a dead person, and every living thing in the sea died. And here's where it gets personal for every human being on earth. The prophecy continues in verses 4-6. The third angel poured out his bowl on the rivers and springs of water, and they became blood. Then I heard the angel in charge of the waters say, "You are just in these judgments, O Holy One, you who are and who were, for they have shed the blood of your holy people and your prophets, and you have given them blood to drink as they deserve." Think about that for a second. Not just the oceans, the fresh water supply, rivers, springs, everything we depend on to survive. But there's more. Revelation 11:6 tells us about 2 special witnesses during the tribulation. They have power to turn the waters into blood and to strike the earth with every kind of plague as often as they want. This same power was given to Moses, who turned the Nile River to blood in Exodus 7:20. Now here's the question that's probably burning in your mind. Are we seeing these prophecies come to pass right now? Here's what I discovered when I dug deeper into this mystery, and it's the key to understanding everything we're witnessing today. The modern reports of blood red water are missing something crucial, something that would definitively prove we're in the end times. Let me show you why the timing doesn't add up. You see, the tribulation period described in Revelation follows a very specific sequence. It's not random chaos. It's an ordered series of judgments. And here's what most people don't realize. The sea turning to blood at the third trumpet judgment comes after trumpets 1 and 2 have already sounded. What does that mean? Well, the first trumpet will involve hail and fire and blood raining down on the earth. The second will cause a third of the trees and all of the grass to be burned up. Look outside your window right now. Has any of that happened yet? The answer tells you everything you need to know about whether we're truly in the tribulation. And the bold judgments that turn both sea and fresh water to blood? Those come even later in the sequence. So if these recent blood-red water events aren't fulfillments of biblical prophecy, what's really going on? The answer involves 3 distinct possibilities, and the third one might surprise you. Here's what's actually happening, and why understanding this could save your life if you ever encounter blood-red water yourself. Sometimes, nature creates phenomena so dramatic they seem supernatural. When water suddenly turns blood red, it's often due to something called an algal bloom, or what scientists call a red tide. Here's how it works. When environmental conditions align perfectly, temperature, nutrients, sunlight, colonies of algae explode in population. These microscopic organisms contain pigments that, in massive concentrations, literally dye the water red. It can happen in both fresh water and salt water. The red water in Nootdorp, the Netherlands? Scientists confirmed it was exactly this natural phenomenon. But here's what makes this unsettling. These blooms are becoming more frequent, and no one fully understands why. The man-made explanation. Sometimes, the truth is more sinister than supernatural. In several cases, that blood-red color comes from human activity, specifically illegal dumping of industrial chemicals. The river in Zhejiang province, China, turned crimson because someone was secretly dumping red dye into the water supply. Think about that. Someone deliberately poisoned an entire river system. The Beirut River in Lebanon sparked a government investigation that traced the red coloration back to a factory releasing chemicals into the water. These weren't accidents. These were deliberate acts that endangered entire communities. Discovery 2. The Euphrates connection, when geography becomes prophecy. But perhaps the most startling discovery came from satellite imagery analysis of another prophetically significant body of water, the Euphrates River. Since 2022, the Euphrates has been dropping to historically low levels. Water flow has decreased by over 70% compared to normal levels. Archaeological sites that were underwater for millennia have been exposed. The Euphrates River is drying up. Are we witnessing the end times? What if I told you that one of the most important rivers in human history, a river that's flowed for thousands of years through the cradle of civilization, is vanishing before our eyes? And what if I told you that this exact event was predicted in ancient prophecies as a sign that the final battle for humanity is about to begin? You're about to discover something that mainstream media isn't telling you about the Euphrates River, something that's happening right now as we speak, and it's revealing secrets that have been buried for millennia. But here's what will really grab your attention. The Bible doesn't just mention this river drying up once. It actually provides us with a detailed roadmap of exactly when and why this will happen. And what comes next will determine the fate of every person on Earth. Let me paint you a picture of what we're dealing with here. The Euphrates River has been the lifeblood of the Middle East for over 4,000 years. This isn't just any river. This is part of the legendary Fertile Crescent, the birthplace of human civilization itself. It flows through Turkey, Syria, and Iraq, sustaining millions of lives. But over the past few years, something unprecedented has been happening. The water levels have dropped so dramatically that ancient ruins are being exposed for the first time in centuries. Caves that haven't seen daylight since biblical times are now visible. Archaeological treasures are emerging from what used to be the riverbed. And here's what has Bible scholars around the world sitting up and taking notice. This exact scenario was predicted thousands of years ago, down to the smallest detail. The question everyone's asking is this: are we witnessing prophecy unfold in real time? Now, I need you to pay close attention to what I'm about to reveal, because the Bible gives us not one, but two distinct prophecies about the Euphrates River drying up. And understanding the difference between them could be the key to knowing where we are on the prophetic timeline. The first prediction appears in one of the most dramatic judgment oracles ever written. God is pronouncing judgment against ancient Babylon, against its officials, wise men, false prophets, warriors, horses, chariots, and treasures. And then, like a final devastating blow, God declares a drought on her waters. They will dry up, for it is a land of idols, idols that will go mad with terror. Jeremiah 50:38. The waters of Babylon? That's the Euphrates and Tigris rivers. Both rivers are drying up right now. Coincidence? Keep listening, because it gets much more intense. The second prediction comes from the book of Revelation, and what it describes will send chills down your spine. Here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. The book of Revelation doesn't just describe random judgments. It lays out a precise sequence of events that will unfold during the 7-year tribulation period. And the drying of the Euphrates plays a crucial role in the grand finale. Picture this. The judgments start with 7 seals being broken, Revelation 6:1-17, 8:1-5. Then 7 trumpets sound, each bringing devastating plagues, Revelation 8:6-9:21, 11:15-19. Finally, 7 bowls of God's wrath are poured out, Revelation 16:1-21. But here's what makes this terrifying. These bowl judgments are so destructive that, if they continued, every human being on earth would die. Mark 13:19-20. The 6th bowl judgment, the second to last judgment of the entire tribulation, targets the Euphrates River specifically. Revelation 16:12 reveals exactly what will happen. The 6th angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east. But wait, there's a strategic reason for this that will blow your mind. The river isn't dried up randomly. It's being prepared as a highway. A highway for what? For a massive army from the east to march toward their destiny. And where are they marching? To the place that in Hebrew is called Armageddon. Revelation 16:16. That's right. The drying of the Euphrates is the final setup for the Battle of Armageddon, the ultimate showdown between good and evil, where Jesus returns and destroys all of God's enemies. Revelation 16:17-20, 19:11-21. Now here's the million-dollar question. Is what we're seeing today the beginning of this prophetic fulfillment? 5 clues that reveal the truth. Possibility number 1. Ancient history repeating. Some scholars believe Jeremiah's prophecy was already fulfilled back in 539 BC. Here's the fascinating backstory. The Persian king Cyrus wanted to conquer Babylon, but the city seemed impregnable. So what did he do? According to the Greek historian Herodotus, Cyrus diverted the Euphrates River just enough to allow his army to sneak into the city through the water channels under the walls. Brilliant military strategy? Absolutely. Fulfillment of biblical prophecy? Possibly. Possibility number 2. Lost in time. The prophecy might have been fulfilled by a natural drought at some unknown point in history. Ancient records aren't complete, and significant droughts could have occurred without being properly documented. Possibility number 3. Right here, right now. What if we're witnessing Jeremiah's prophecy being fulfilled as the Tigris and Euphrates rivers diminish before our eyes? The timing would be remarkable, considering everything else happening in our world today. Possibility number 4. Still to come. Perhaps. Jeremiah's prophecy is actually connected to the end times events described in Revelation, and both will be fulfilled during the Great Tribulation that's still ahead of us. Possibility number 5. The double fulfillment. Here's a possibility that keeps many prophecy experts awake at night. What if the prophecy has a double fulfillment? Once in the past, as a warning and demonstration of God's power, and again in the future during the end times as the final judgment? But regarding the Revelation prophecy about the Euphrates drying up, that one has a definitive timeline. And what I'm about to tell you will either give you peace of mind or cause you to start preparing for what's coming. The 3 unmistakable signs. We're not there yet. Here's how you can know with certainty whether we're experiencing the end times drying of the Euphrates described in Revelation. I'm going to give you 3 clear indicators that will settle this question once and for all. Sign number 1. The sequence is everything. The 6th bowl judgment doesn't happen in isolation. It comes near the very end of a 7-year tribulation period. Before this supernatural drying occurs, the Antichrist must rise to power globally. 2 miracle-working prophets must appear in Jerusalem and preach for 1,260 days. Devastating judgments must ravage the earth in a specific order. Look around you right now. Has any of that happened yet? The answer tells you everything you need to know about our current timeline. Sign number 2. The commerce connection. Here's a detail most people miss. According to Revelation 18:17-19, during the tribulation period, Babylon will be conducting massive commercial shipping operations. The prophecy specifically mentions commerce by ship, which means the rivers in that area must be flowing freely during the tribulation, at least until the very end. If the rivers are already dried up now, how could this future commerce be possible? Sign number 3. The Eastern Army, the supernatural drying of the Euphrates, in Revelation 16:12, serves one specific purpose: to create a pathway for the kings from the east to bring their army westward toward Israel. This isn't a metaphor, it's describing a literal military invasion involving millions of soldiers. Right now, today, is there a massive Eastern army threatening to march toward Israel? Are world leaders gathering their forces for a final assault on the Holy Land? The current geopolitical situation, complex as it is, doesn't match this specific prophetic scenario. Here's what you need to understand. When the time comes for the Battle of Armageddon, the Euphrates River will indeed dry up completely and supernaturally. The current water level changes, the revealing of ancient ruins and caves, fascinating as they are, have nothing to do with Revelation 16:12. The biblical timeline simply hasn't reached that point yet. But here's what should capture your attention. The fact that we're already seeing dramatic changes to this prophetically significant river should remind us that the events described in Scripture are not fairy tales. But before we draw conclusions about specific timing, it's crucial to understand why attempts to set exact dates for prophetic fulfillment always fail and often damage people's faith. Throughout history, well-meaning teachers have pointed to blood moons, solar eclipses, and other celestial events as evidence that Christ's return would occur on specific dates. William Miller convinced thousands that Jesus would return in 1844. Edgar Whisenant sold millions of copies of 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Be in 1988. Harold Camping predicted the end would come in 2011. All were wrong. Jesus clearly stated, "But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only." Matthew 24:36. But let me show you the deeper reasons why date-setting fails and why it contradicts God's purposes for prophetic revelation. The history of date-setting reads like a catalog of spiritual disasters that damaged countless lives and brought ridicule upon biblical prophecy. Miller, a Baptist preacher, became convinced through elaborate calculations that Jesus would return on October 22, 1844. His followers, known as Millerites, numbered in the tens of thousands. Many sold their possessions, quit their jobs, and gathered in groups to await Christ's return. When October 22nd passed without Christ's appearance, the event became known as the Great Disappointment. Families had been financially ruined. Children were left traumatized. Many abandoned Christianity entirely, concluding that if biblical prophecy could be so wrong about timing, it couldn't be trusted about anything. Miller himself later admitted, "I confess my error and acknowledge my disappointment. Yet I still believe that the day of the Lord is at hand." But the damage was done. The failed prediction provided ammunition for skeptics and atheists who pointed to Millerism as evidence that biblical prophecy was human delusion rather than divine revelation. 100 years later, Edgar Whisenant published 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Be in 1988, selling over 300,000 copies. His calculations were based on complex interpretations of feast days, astronomical events, and mathematical formulas derived from biblical chronologies. Whisenant was so confident in his calculations that he offered to pay for reprinting costs if the rapture didn't occur as predicted. Christian bookstores promoted the book heavily. Radio stations discussed his theories. Believers made life-altering decisions based on his timeline. When 1988 passed without the rapture, Whisenant published revised calculations for 1989, then 1993, then 1994. Each failure further damaged the credibility of prophetic teaching and caused believers to question whether biblical prophecy was reliable. More recently, Harold Camping used his family radio network to predict that the rapture would occur on May 21, 2011, followed by the end of the world on October 21, 2011. His elaborate mathematical calculations were based on biblical numerology and feast day interpretations. Camping's followers spent their life savings on billboard campaigns announcing the end date. Some quit their jobs, stopped paying bills, and neglected their responsibilities. When May 21st passed without incident, Camping revised his calculations, claiming a spiritual judgment had occurred, and the physical end would come in October. The October date also passed without fulfillment. Camping eventually admitted his error but not before causing financial ruin, family divisions, and spiritual trauma for thousands of followers. Understanding why date setting appeals to people reveals deeper issues about human nature and spiritual maturity. Date setting appeals to people who want to control uncertainty through knowledge. If we can calculate exactly when Christ will return, we can plan our lives accordingly, avoid difficult decisions, and reduce anxiety about the future. But this desire for control contradicts the biblical emphasis on living by faith rather than sight. Hebrews 11:1 defines faith. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. God deliberately withholds exact timing information to develop faith, patience, and spiritual dependence, rather than mathematical certainty. Date setters often position themselves as having received special revelation or understanding that other Christians lack. This appeals to pride and the desire to be part of an elite group with insider information. But 1 Corinthians 8:1 warns, "Knowledge puffeth up, but charity edifieth." True spiritual knowledge should produce humility and love, not pride and exclusivity. Some believers embrace date setting because it provides an escape from long-term responsibilities and difficult relationships. If Christ is returning next year, why work on marriage problems, career development, or personal growth? But Jesus' parables consistently emphasize faithfulness in ordinary responsibilities while awaiting his return. Luke 19:13 records Jesus' instruction, "Occupy till I come." The Greek word occupy means to conduct business, fulfill obligations, and maintain responsibilities until he returns. Scripture provides clear principles that make date setting inappropriate for several reasons. Acts 1:7 records Jesus' direct response to questions about timing. "And he said unto them, It is not for you to know the times or the seasons, which the Father hath put in his own power." The Greek word for times, chronos, refers to specific dates or duration. The word for seasons, kairos, refers to appointed periods or opportune moments. Jesus explicitly told his disciples that both specific timing and general seasons are under the Father's sovereign control, not human calculation. God deliberately maintains uncertainty about exact timing for several spiritual purposes. James 5:7-8 connects Christ's return to patient endurance. "Be patient therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it, until he receive the early and latter rain. Be ye also patient. Stablish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh." Patience can only be developed through uncertainty about timing. If we knew exactly when Christ would return, patience would be unnecessary. Matthew 24:42 commands, "Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord doth come." Spiritual watchfulness requires constant readiness rather than calculated preparation for specific dates. If we knew the exact timing, vigilance would only be necessary near the predicted date. Matthew 24:45-46 describes the faithful servant. "Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household, to give them meat in due season? Blessed is that servant, whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing." Faithfulness means continued obedience regardless of timing uncertainty. Knowing exact dates would eliminate the faith component from faithful service. Date setting creates several theological problems that contradict fundamental Christian doctrines. When date predictions fail, Skeptics use these failures to attack the reliability of biblical prophecy generally. Failed date setting provides ammunition for those who want to dismiss Scripture as human speculation rather than divine revelation. Deuteronomy 18:21-22 establishes the test for true prophets. "And if thou say in thine heart, How shall we know the word which the Lord hath not spoken? When a prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, if the thing follow not, nor come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken, but the prophet hath spoken it presumptuously. Thou shalt not be afraid of him." Date setters who claim biblical authority for their predictions and are proven wrong demonstrate that their predictions weren't from God, regardless of their sincere intentions. When dates pass without fulfillment, the artificial urgency disappears, and people often swing to spiritual complacency, concluding that if the specific predictions were wrong, perhaps Christ's return isn't imminent after all. While rejecting date setting, Christians should still recognize and respond appropriately to prophetic signs. Luke 21:28 provides the proper response to prophetic signs. "And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh." Jesus commanded believers to watch for signs as indicators that his return is approaching, but not to calculate specific dates from those signs. 1 Thessalonians 5:4-6 describes proper spiritual preparation. "But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief. Ye are all the children of light, and the children of the day. We are not of the night, nor of darkness. Therefore, let us not sleep, as do others, but let us watch and be sober." Spiritual readiness means living in consistent obedience and faithfulness, not making dramatic changes based on timing predictions. 2 Timothy 4:2 commands, "Preach the word. Be instant in season, out of season. Reprove, rebuke, exhort, with all long-suffering and doctrine." The proper response to prophetic expectation is increased faithfulness in normal Christian responsibilities, not abandonment of those responsibilities for prophetic speculation. The September 7th to 8th blood moon event provides an excellent opportunity to apply these principles correctly. The event is significant as a prophetic sign, demonstrating God's power over creation and His faithfulness to biblical prophecy. It deserves attention, study, and spiritual response, but it should not be used as a basis for calculating specific dates for Christ's return, the rapture, or other prophetic events. The proper response is: recognize God's sovereignty over natural phenomena. Acknowledge that prophetic signs are multiplying in frequency and intensity. Increase spiritual readiness through prayer, Bible study, and evangelism. Maintain faithfulness in ordinary Christian responsibilities. Avoid setting specific dates or making dramatic life changes based on timing speculation. The signs are real. The timeline is God's. Your readiness is your responsibility. Jesus told us to watch and pray. But watch for what? We cannot stand still and watch the clouds to wait for Him to appear. That is not what He meant. He meant, keep an eye on what's going on in the world and see what signs I gave you to help you prepare. Signals are the signs. So, let's look at Matthew chapter 24, where the disciples asked Him, "What will be the signs or signals of your return? What would we do if we don't know when it's going to happen?" To their inquiry, Jesus gave a direct and unambiguous answer. We can thank God that He responded in such a straightforward manner. In the book of Revelation, He gives a much more detailed and comprehensive response, But here he gives a rundown of the signs that will precede his arrival. The disciples approached Jesus secretly as he was seated on the Mount of Olives. Now, in that passage, he gave 4 distinct signs of his coming. One of the 4 signs is already here, while the other 3 are not. That is why I say, we are in the beginning of the end times. So, what exactly are these 4 signs he gave us? Sign number 1. Global disasters. The birth pangs of a new world. The first is clearly disasters in the world, and he mentions, for example, wars, famines, and earthquakes. These are certainly happening, but they have been happening for over 2,000 years. They are getting more intense. So we certainly are in this first sign. There are already wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, and famine. Jesus says, "Don't be deceived." He says that again and again, all the way through. As we get nearer to the end, the danger is deception, both inside and outside the church. In this case, he says, from false Christs, false messiahs, people who will take advantage of the turmoil of natural disasters to present themselves as saviors. There are well-known examples of people who pretended to be saviors and led people into desert locations, only to end in tragedy. However, there are many false Christs, false saviors, who claim to be the promised deliverer from all our troubles. The more problems there are, the more false deliverers there would be. But, as Jesus advises us, don't be alarmed. Don't be worried when you learn of a new war, a new tragedy, or a new famine breaking out. But here's what will completely change your perspective on world events. He said something astonishing. These are painful events, but they are not pangs of death. They are birth pains. So when you read of disasters in the media, these are the pains that mean something new is about to be born. This should completely change our attitude. We know what the world is coming to. We should not be alarmed or dismayed, not as worried as the world will be about these things. Disasters in the world are the pain of birth in a new world that is to be born. Therefore, we are very different. We have sympathy for those who are suffering disasters, and hopefully we express it in help. But in our hearts, we are not alarmed. We are hopeful. We are looking for a new birth of a new world, and therefore we are not dismayed or depressed by all the problems in the world. In short, Jesus' advice to us would be not to panic, not to be disturbed, but even to rejoice and say, "These are all signs of something new happening." Sign number 2. Changes in the church. The great falling away. The second sign of his coming is not in the world, but in the church. Disasters in the world are the first sign. The church, not the world, is the second sign of his coming. The first warning is disasters around the world. The second is changes in the church. Just as he divided the first sign into 3 parts, wars, earthquakes, and famines, he divides the second sign into 3 parts, all of which occur within the church. The first is persecution, that we will be hated in every nation. The second aspect of this sign would be a significant reduction in the church's size. Most people's love will grow cold. When the whole church is under strain, many nominal Christians, if not all true Christians, would leave. Under the burdens of universal persecution, their love would grow cold. That's a very depressing sign. But here's the big surprise in the third part of the sign. The gospel will be preached to every racial group. The third part of the sign is that the gospel will be proclaimed. A smaller, purified church would have a greater impact on the planet. That is exactly what Jesus is implying. False prophets can be a source of deceit in all of this. We are aware of the teachings of false prophets. When there is no peace, they teach peace. Rather than being a source of challenge, their message is one of comfort. It's all right. It won't happen, they'll say. All is fine. Everything is fantastic. The church is in good hands. That is a false prediction. They may be to blame for the large number of people who would leave the church at that time. Now, Jesus' advice is to keep going. Don't give in to these false prophets. Whoever perseveres to the end will be saved. When that sign occurs, when all aspects of the church are despised by the world, that is Jesus' advice to all Christians. Christians are social misfits, so there would be hatred. This world does not belong to us. Our citizenship is in the heavenly realms. We are unique, and it is because of our uniqueness that hate can arise. Since Jesus was so different from everyone else, he drew hate against himself. John 15:19. If you were of the world, it would love you as its own. Instead, the world hates you, because you are not of the world. But I have chosen you out of the world. It's not fun to be despised. Sign number 3. Jerusalem in distress. The ultimate deception. That takes us to the third sign of the end times, which is Jerusalem's distress. Geographically, it will be very limited. In this passage, Jesus quotes Daniel's prophecies, and there is a character in Daniel's prophecies who is referred to as the abomination of desolation. Daniel mentions it 3 times. What does it all mean? What's the big deal? It's about a human being, a man, who establishes himself in the very city of God, calls himself God, and refuses to accept anyone else's will above his own. A tyrant whose arrival will have global ramifications, but who will be centered in Jerusalem, the city of God, the holy place. Sign number 4. Cosmic blackout, when God turns off the lights. Then Jesus says that the 4th sign of his coming will come immediately after that. So we shall know when he is coming. We shall be ready. When that sign comes, there will be no danger of false prophets or false messiahs. There will be no deception. It will be too quick. What will happen is that all natural light will be switched off. The sun will go dark. The stars will fall. There are many predictions of this all the way through the Bible. Isaiah predicts it. The heavens will be rolled up like a carpet. All the stars of heaven will be dissolved. The skies will be rolled up like a scroll, and all their stars will fall like withered leaves from the vine, like foliage from the fig tree. The natural light will be gone, leaving only artificial light to illuminate the earth. What is happening? What is going on? People may ask. This is it, Christians will exclaim. The sun, stars, and moon stop shining right before that happens. God turns off the lights of heaven to prepare for the blaze of light from the lightning that will mark his return. Then he comes on the clouds back to planet Earth, and we meet him. We are not meeting in an earthly stadium because there isn't one large enough to accommodate such a large crowd. We'll reach him in the air, and that'll suffice. Isn't that a fantastic prospect? When you see all these things, you know he is at the gates, just about to walk through, he says.